It's been just over 2 months since Starfield fans got their last big update on Bethesda's brand new IP from the Constellation Questions video that Todd Howard did all the way back in October. Today, though, we got to see a second video in this ongoing questionnaire series, with this one covering things like quests, companions, and factions by none other than lead quest designer and head writer for the main story, Will Shen. Before we get into that though, I just wanted to remind everybody that leaving a like on these videos helps me out a lot, and subscribing helps even more. If you enjoyed this video, or found it informative, consider leaving a like and hitting subscribe, and let me know what your thoughts or theories are on this upcoming game in the comments below. Thank you so much, and enjoy the video. We are once again hosted by community director Jess Finster, who sat down with Starfield's lead quest designer Will Shen to answer the community's most burning questions about Bethesda's newest IP. The first question that Shen was asked about was the form that random encounters would take during Starfield. Random encounters, of course, being ambient or side quests or interactions that the player character can run into while out and about in the world. Shen would go on to describe that because of new technology the studio was developing in order to better populate entire planets of people, that random encounters would be a bit more advanced in scope than previous Bethesda open-world RPG games. He detailed a theoretical situation in where the player travels to an outpost, and they are asked by someone there to help solve a pressing situation. Shen didn't elaborate too much as to a short list of what these potential situations might be, but he did use the classic kidnapped team members as an example. This already stands out as different from random encounters in other games, where you are just approached by some random NPC while playing through the course of the main game. Instead, it seems that you will be recognized as an individual of some noteworthy skill in specific settings and are then approached to help with a problem. He also went on to detail that because of this new technology that Bethesda was building to populate planets, that this random encounter you'd pick up from a dynamically placed outpost or settlement would then direct you to a dynamically placed dungeon or surface world location populated by both enemies and the person that you've been sent to rescue. While much time wasn't afforded to elaborate on this is a pretty huge upgrade from past Bethesda RPG games like Fallout or Skyrim, where repeatable or random encounters like this would often take you to either a previously visited or as of yet unvisited location in the world. With this technology, it sounds as if the game will be able to basically build whole new temporary locations for random encounter quests. That's pretty amazing. Back during the E3 gameplay trailer, several eagle-eyed fans were able to spot a star system called Sol, which is often the given name of the solar system that our planet Earth is actually located in, and questioned as to whether or not we would be able to visit humanity's first ever home over the course of the game. During this interview, Shen would go on to explain that very early on in the game's main quest, we would be able to return to humanity's home system, known in-universe as the Old Neighborhood, and we would find ourselves in the first ever off-world settlement that humans established, located on Mars, called Cydonia. While we don't know much, or anything really about Cydonia, I'm not even sure if I spelled it right in my script, it is indicated that the city is very populated and that there are plenty of problems for us to get involved with, and plenty of people for us to meet. Shen also mentions that our reason for being in the Old Neighborhood in the first place is part of a mission for Constellation, where we are tasked with discovering more about the artifacts we see in many of the main game trailers, which supposedly hold the secrets of the universe. Could this be hinting that these artifacts had something to do with humanity's ambition or necessity to venture out past our solar system? I guess for now, all we can do is speculate. The next question was a bit of a lengthy one, but it basically boiled down to asking what kind of role factions would play over the course of the game. Would factions function more like Skyrim, where you could join and complete quests for all of them, or would they be like Fallout 4, where you have to pick a side to reach the end of the game? Shen's response was basically that the main quest takes you on something of a tour of all of the factions of the game. Somewhat similar, I would assume, to something like Fallout 4, where you're introduced to the Minutemen, then the Brotherhood, then the Railroad, and finally the Institute, wrapping up the game's entire faction roster. Much like with Skyrim, however, it seems like the player character will be able to interact with and assist multiple factions at the same time, helping to influence their direction as the story progresses. Unlike either game, though, Shen hints that there may actually be multiple different paths that each faction can advance in, specifically alluding to the idea that you can influence the ideology of these groups. The example he gave being whether an in-game faction, the Free Star Rangers, would care more about industry or justice, and that the player character would be able to influence this decision based on interactions and gameplay decisions. If this is true, this is a huge step forward in an area that most RPG fans criticize Bethesda for, a shallowness when it comes to player decision. While it remains to be seen exactly how a shift from ideology would change the faction's endgame situation, if it does at all, this more influential role that the player can have indicates that Bethesda is thinking more critically about the role that the player has with relation to not only the people, but the groups and factions in their games. In previous Bethesda RPGs, companions more or less served as little more than walking storage boxes or an extra arm in battle, such as in Skyrim, and were later fleshed out with backstories and even romance options like in Fallout 4. Some were even able to complete small gameplay tasks like hacking terminals or picking locks. In Starfield, it seems that companion utility has been improved upon once again, as Shen would go on to answer questions about how our interstellar buddies would work in-game. While Shen describes that companions would have opinions about the player's actions, a feature we see returning from Fallout 4, he would go on to describe how, in some instances, you can have your companion speak for you to potentially solve a problem. He described a scenario where the player has been denied access to a specific location, and that they could then turn to their companion and ask them to solve the problem and speak on their behalf. This, however, may not be without consequences, as Shen hinted that, should your companion not have the right skill set for the situation, it may result in a reaction worse than just being asked to leave. This is frankly a pretty big development for companions in Bethesda RPG games, as it indicates that there could be two kinds of main companions, combat focused and interaction focused. Companions in past games are built using stats and perks similar to what the player has access to, which allows companions to have their own unique builds and skill sets to match their personalities. This could indicate that some companions are built for things such as combat and warfare, and others are built for things such as bartering, speech checks, and maybe even some others that are built for things like crafting or scientific endeavors. If true, this could be a huge development that would allow for different play styles, not only based on how you build your character, but also what companions you pick up along the way, making things feel more like actual adventures with friends rather than just someone else tagging along with you. According to Shen, they will also be able to crew in your ship, which if that means they can also fly your ship for you, that would be a pretty big step forward in making companions feel more real and personal. The final question asked during this interview had to do with NPCs and how they will react to different decisions and/or moral choices that the player makes over the course of the game. This is another point that many Bethesda RPG fans have noted in previous games, that some NPCs, both big and small, don't really seem to have much opinion on the outcome of major events that happen around them. Shen described that each questline will have major characters attached to them in some way, and depending on how you complete different quests, these major characters' opinions of you will change one way or the other, much like how companions reacted to your in-game plays and speech decisions in Fallout 4. Seeming to be drawing inspiration from the Mass Effect series, this also indicates that the decisions you make may determine who will and who will not be present by the end of the game. He also hinted that this would apply to faction members as well, with certain NPCs potentially leaving should their opinion of you, or the direction you are leading the faction, fall too low. This is super interesting because it indicates that factions will play a much larger role in the game than previous Bethesda titles. In Skyrim, for example, you more or less just walked alongside the Imperials or the Stormcloaks during the Civil War, and in Fallout 4, you pretty much just picked your favorite group. In Starfield, though, it seems more like a balancing act, where keeping certain factions happy based on your playthroughs is going to be a much bigger part of the endgame. I am curious, though, if, like in Fallout New Vegas, there will be an option to approach the endgame solo, defying the other factions and striking out on your own. Based on what we've seen so far, I'm not entirely sure that will be an option, but it's interesting to think about. And even if it's not, it sounds like Starfield has more than enough story to keep things interesting. Before we wrap up, though, I am curious to know what you all think. What are some of your thoughts, theories, and speculations, given what we've seen from this latest update from Starfield? For now, though, I want to thank you so much for watching, happy holidays, and I will see you all out there in the wasteland.